Hello? Is this working? Is this working? How do I find out? Maybe if I return to my channel. Excellent. Alright, so this is a character generator that I had been working on quite a long time ago. But I lost all of my progress because that was several computers ago, and I guess I never saved it. If I did, it's probably somewhere in my OneDrive, and I don't really care enough to find it. So I decided to start over. I've worked on it for probably a couple hours already, and I've got just a pretty rough random generation currently set up. I'm working off of Yizgarth as opposed to the more popular D&D rules. Um, and in Yizgarth, you have a whole slew of extra traits and attributes and extra rules and whatnot. But it's what I'm used to. It's what I've played. I need to turn down my watch back. That's way too loud. Okay, so essentially, my goal is to just have something that you open up, you run the program. It's got a full GUI. For those who wouldn't know, graphical user interface is what I believe it stands for, but I could be misremembering. But a full GUI, to make it relatively user friendly, but essentially just for the D&D games that I play and that my family has played. For either character adjustment, like say you level up and you need to reprint one, or if you need to totally regenerate a character, my goal is to you boot it up, full GUI, pretty easy. And then, you can. So there's a couple different ways around this, right? I'm exercising essentially the most basic form of writing, which is object-oriented programming. That's like the biggest factor to Java. Is with Java, you create objects and assign values to them, whether it be lots of variables with different variables like up here with different values, or I've got some here as well, but this is the main. This is what runs when you actually click run. It boots this up and runs through these lines of code. And then this right here is a public class or an object. And I went ahead and named it stats. I probably won't change that unless I absolutely have to, just because you can get into some messy business if the class name is not correct here because you're calling it over in the main. You can get into funky business too, because if it doesn't save properly over here, then you suddenly have the wrong file that's being called, or it doesn't even know what to call because the file is no longer named what the class is. So you could be trying to call the class here, but it can't find it because the file's not named the same thing. But just really basically, I've set up a couple of loops. The way Yizgarth works and the way that we play it, it's not necessarily the way that the rule set is according to the book. We've modified it slightly just over the years. And I say we, I mean, truly, it's my dad who has modified it slightly. He's the one who is the most used to Yizgarth. He's been playing it for probably 20, almost 30 years. But so he has essentially come up with, you have 144 points to spend over 12 different attributes. You have your constitution, strength, dexterity, agility, talent, intelligence, willpower, judgment, zeal, appearance, charisma, and your social class. Most of these are fairly explanatory for themselves. Social class is sort of your standing in the world. Your charisma is, generally how well you can, do in conversations. Appearance is how you look. Zeal is piety. It's your loyalty to a higher power. Judgment, willpower, intelligence, talent, all of that's still fairly explanatory in itself. But then you get to the there are three separate categories is what I called them. You have your physical attributes, constitution, strength, dexterity, agility. Your mental, well, I guess it's not quite mental, but your mental category, talent, which is for magic, intelligence, willpower, judgment. And then this, I guess, is kind of your worldly category, because you have your zeal, appearance, charisma, and social. But so you have to have a minimum of 36 points in each category. So, if you do strength, constitution, dexterity, agility, you want to lower those because you're a magician, a mage or something like that. You have to have a minimum of 36 points in this category. So I have a couple while loops set up. So it's saying essentially while constitution, strength, dexterity, and agility are less than category min, which is 36. While it is less than 36, it will run this, which is fairly redundant, just because I like to cover my butt just in case I mistype something and it doesn't assign the right value. It's what it's saying is constitution is equal to a randomly generated number that is between, I know it says 20 there, but the way coding works is it's 0 through 19, because it's 20 digits. It is not 1 through 20, so that's why I have the 1 tacked on here. It's random generation 0 through 19 plus 1, which makes it 1 through 20. That means it is always a minimum of 1, because you cannot have below a 1 in any given attribute. It has to be a minimum of 1. So there's another little piece of the rule set there. So I have that going for here, and then essentially just the next step is if constitution is equal to 0 somehow, maybe I coded this wrong, I'm not perfect. If constitution is equal to 0, it'll run it again. That way we just have a higher chance of not ending up with 0. I have done that for all of these. I have not gotten to it yet with these. I have done the random generation though, just so that the while loop won't run endlessly. I might have to come up with a better loop solution, just because I did trigger an infinite loop earlier before I had realized that, hey, maybe I should make sure that these other values are being assigned before trying to test it. Granted, that was just because I was saying if Constitution, like, I was saying Constitution can be 1 through 20, and then I was saying 0, 0, 0. That's never going to be more than 20, so it's never going to hit that 36 to end the while loop. So, I mean, in theory, it shouldn't have an infinite loop, but I might have to play with that later just to make it a little more foolproof. And then down here I have so I guess I should explain objects and classes, or classes as objects. So I have, public class stats, and this declares all of the variables that this class will have. Basically what I'm saying is this variable is unique to this object. It is private. You cannot access it outside of this object. So if I was over here in main, I couldn't say, well, I want Constitution to be something else. No, it won't recognize it. It's private to this. That also helps kind of minimize accidentally changing a value where you don't want to. So I have all of those set up. I have my random generation set up here. I'll have to add in a scanner later to take keyboard input, but I'm not quite there yet. Then you come down here, you have your two constructors. There's your default constructor, which I should probably change this just so that it's a little more obvious. You have your default constructor, which I misspelled. Default constructor, which basically says whenever the stats class is called to create an object, if you don't give it any values at all, it's going to automatically go through this. So it will automatically just randomly generate a character's stats as long as they all meet 36 in each category. I'm going to play with it a little bit more too, to maybe have it rerun until it meets 144. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I have not really thought it over too well, because another little tidbit of the Yizgarth rule set that I think we have modified into, just so that it's a little less random, is that you can choose. I mean, this one's totally random. You can do it totally random. That's how you do it through the books. That's like pure rule set. You just roll dice and say, darn, this is what my strength is. I guess I'm not going to be a fighter. But we didn't quite like that. It's a little bit more fun to create a character with the intent of playing them as a certain class. So what, the adaptation that we made was you have a maximum of 144 points. So I will probably put either a if statement at the end that maybe loops by just calling this again, and so it reruns. I don't know. It's a good question, how I will do that. I will figure that out later, probably. But for the next thing, we go from default constructor to overloaded constructor. If you were to call this to create an object, you would be calling it and giving it values, and up here is where you declare all those values, saying, okay, well, you can receive one for each of these, and it's going to if you send the values, it has to be in this order too. It's going to be Constitution, Strength, Dexterity, Agility, so on and so forth. And then this line here, this is just so that I don't have nothing here currently. I haven't made it down quite this far to really flush it out, but I just threw this in here so that I'm not really getting any errors, but I'm also not leaving it totally empty, which keeps it from potentially causing issues just when I'm trying to run and test things while working on other sections. As far as this goes, essentially you're feeding it values, and then you're saying this dot constitution, which is saying the constitution that is associated with this class, this object, is now taking the value from the constitution variable that's being passed through. So, you receive your value here. You're saying, all right, well, this value is now the value for the variable in this class, in this object. And so it's just setting all of these, essentially. I don't have anything to test this yet, just because I haven't made it quite that far. And then next would be your, I've always called them getters. Basically, if you called this, you would, and I have an example here, right here, I have an object created. So I'm calling the class here, I'm saying create object, new character, new car, new care, whatever, equals, well, so class stats, name new care equals new object stats, and that's where it calls the default constructor there, because you're not passing any values in those parentheses. Now here you're saying object new character dot get constitution, and so what this section here is doing is it's saying, all right, so for this object, call this method, and it will call this method here, get constitution, which will return the value of constitution. And so it's, what happens here is when it prints this line, it's saying, okay, what is that value? That value is this, and then it prints the value. And you can see that down here. I've run it oh, you can't scroll up. Well, I've run it at least once, and you can see it here. It's printed the 4 values from that first category. So that's what these do. These all do that, and I'll test them all in time, and I will. These are pretty simple. I probably won't have to really make a lot of change here. So it's fairly nice, honestly. Excuse me. And then, man. And then you move down and you get to your setters. Very similar to the getters in name a function. Basically, since you declare these variables to be unique to this object, that you cannot access them outside of this area here, what you're saying with the setters is you're giving yourself a way to adjust these if you have to. That way they can't be accidentally adjusted. You just, you have to specifically adjust it, and it'll only adjust it per object. It won't change it like definitely across all objects or anything like that. So that's pretty nice, because I don't have anything here yet, but basically what you would do is you would write it pretty similar to this. You would say, why is that highlighted? Is that because, oh, I wonder. That's weird. I don't know why it's highlighting that one. There, it's not anymore. I am basically only just learning Eclipse. I typically have learned in college with JGrasp, but I decided to try out Eclipse, see how I feel about it. So far, I really like it. It's not too bad, but essentially the setters work similar to the getters here. You have your interesting. You call them very similar, so I'd say set agility instead of get agility, except you would pass a value inside of the parentheses, so it's similar in function to the overloaded constructor, but you only pass the value that you need to. And so that would, receive the value over here, and then you're like similar to the default or the overloaded constructor again. It is only saying, like, it's I haven't flushed it out, but it's only saying, the variable in this object receives the value that is passed to it. So And I could code it a different way. I could say int, you know, intelligence 2 or new value or something like that. I could do any of those, and then I wouldn't have to put the this, but I like to do it this way because it makes more sense to me. It's just keeps things clearer where you're receiving, the value for intelligence. You're saying, take this intelligence and, change the value with this one. I don't know. It makes sense to me. But that's about as far as I've currently made it. Back here in the main here, I do have a scanner set up here. So this receives, it's a pre-made method, and it does similar to what I'm doing here, except it's, its own object and all that, and it's passing, your system's keystrokes in. It creates a buffer essentially. So when it starts looking, like right here, when it starts looking for input, it will receive that input, create a buffer, with all kinds of special characters, and there's like crazy things you can do with it. But just very simply, I have it taking the next line, so until a line break, which is a space or an enter, something like that. I think it's a space. I think next line will end at a space. So it'll take, the next line, and it'll assign it to this value. Pretty simple. And then all I have here is I just have a string variable set up, and I assign it with an empty value here, a space. It's not literally empty, but when you give it the space, it just frees up some errors. It allows you to compile it a little easier in some cases. But, I just have a very basic, would you like to generate a character sheet? Y equals yes, N equals no. And then I have it print out a blank line to give it a space, and then it looks for input. And I'm saying, if the received input is equal to Y, print out, let's get started, and then it runs some of the test things. Or else, if the input is equal to N, print out, too bad, maybe later. And then at the very end here, I have this if statement. I have else. So any other input received besides Y or N, any other input, it seems you've entered the wrong character, please try again. And I could always do this in a loop, that way it potentially, doesn't oh man. That way it doesn't constantly loop. I mean, it would, I don't really see the need to loop, because if you accidentally hit the wrong character, you can just restart. It's not like it really ends after you've gotten too deep in or anything, so it's pretty nice. I will add a separate function later for updating a character sheet. This is purely just like something I mashed together for testing, and I'll probably go back and forth a whole lot. But I only have a little bit of time before I have to head off to work, so I'm just gonna get right into it. I probably won't be talking a whole lot. I'll explain little things here and there, but I'm just going to start working on the rest of this so that I can set it all up like this first statement. Don't want to do willpower again. And so if you see me here where I'm doing the double equals, that's a comparison symbol instead of an assignment symbol. It's saying compare judgment to 0 instead of assign 0 to judgment. And another little thing, the if statements will work with a space here. That's just a matter of preference to me. I just don't prefer to put a space there. It makes more sense in my head. Same goes for this here. Doesn't have to be a space there. I do like to put a space there. I mean, and this as well. You could code this all on the same line if you really wanted to. I probably wouldn't recommend it. It just makes for a little convoluted code. It's a little easier to scroll down, see all of it broken down pretty easily. You know, because when you're coding, you want to make things super easy to read, just in case you make a mistake and you have to go back and check for things. You just really don't want to make it too convoluted, since it will be really difficult to check that in the future. Oh, hold on. Okay, I'm back. I don't recall what I was saying. Besides just good coding technique. You know, you want to always be careful of that. Oh, and the reason I'm putting this section here in a parentheses, and I, again, don't think I have to do this, but the reason I'm putting the you starting the parentheses, doing random.nextInt and then +1 is because to me it's just kind of like similar to PEMDAS. What it's saying is add this together and then assign the value. It just makes more sense in my head. I'm pretty sure it would work if I took those outside parentheses away. These are the ones that matter since you're passing that value to the nextInt method. It's giving it that upper limit. But yeah, I mean, appearance equals rand.nextInt 20 + 1. It just makes sense to me. Similar to PEMDAS. See, and here I am now forgetting to start it like that. Okay. Might help if Alright, so I finished all of those. And then there's another type of while statement, I think, that is it while true? There's a way to do a while. Is it do while? No. There's one where you set it up to check at the end. That way it runs less. Because the way it's set up right now, it says while and then checks. And so it does this check at the beginning instead of running this first and checking at the end. So it's essentially, say, like getting in a no first and then starting, whereas there's, and I'm sure I'll figure this out later, and it is a better way to do it, in my opinion, because it doesn't check until the end. But there's a way to do it where it says, loop, starts the loop, runs this, and it says, well, loop again if it doesn't meet this thing. And I don't recall what it is. Let me see if I can look it up. It is not a for loop. Maybe it's a do while. It is. Do loop body while at the end with the test expression. So what I would do is I would grab all of that. Wait. Oh. Okay, that's why I have that. Again, I've like a little bit of PEMDAS here. It's got the inner parentheses for that, and then it compares. I believe I can grab all of this, say do. It'll run this, and then at the very end here, and again, this is, I'm sorry, did I not copy that? Did I just delete it? But again, this is personal preference. I believe I do have to have a No, this has to be after the, right? Oh, I just put that in the loop. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Now it works. So again, personal preference. I like to put the whiles for the do while loop at the end of the bracket here. And I know that might sound funny, me saying that when I couldn't even remember what a do while loop was. I just couldn't remember what it was called. I knew it existed. I knew that this is how I did it previously. But I like to do it like this just because you have the brackets right there. It shows you pretty clearly what it is. I believe this is how it works. So actually, now that I've modified so much before I get too far, no issues. It started. Yes, it runs fine. Now, granted, I only know for sure that it ran this far since I'm not testing any of these others yet. So I'm going to go ahead and adapt these to do whiles and then go ahead and add a couple of calls for checking those values just to see if they're randomly assigning it. And I might go ahead and add in a function too where it adds it all together. That way I can see roughly what the max number is each time. Because it'll give me kind of an idea of maybe how to do the 144 max. I don't know. We'll get there. We'll get there. Oh, and the reason that it's not going colored until I put this semicolon here, the semicolon shows the end of a line. Basically, you have to tell it to, like, hey, this is the line of code to run, ends the line of code, starts the next line of code. To be honest, I'm not totally sure off the top of my head exactly why that is, but just like how some things make sense in my head, there are some things that the computer can only understand certain ways when compiling code, and so it uses these semicolons. Again, a little bit of conjecture here. Uses these semicolons to maybe just show like line breaks when it's reading it. Because it, unlike us, it can't look at this and see, oh, well, it's laid out like this. Like it can't look at it, Maybe it can, though, with the way AI is going. Maybe you can set up AI to look at it and, quote, read it, unquote. But the brackets, the reason the brackets don't need one is because the brackets already kind of serve as a line break, because you're giving an instruction here and it's reading through all of this stuff, and then this is kind of the end, so you don't need a semicolon for the lines of the brackets. But I do have to put a semicolon if I'm giving it more instructions after the bracket. But now that I've changed that, let me go test these other lines here. Maybe I should split this up so that it's kind of easier to read too. Is that talent? I hate that it does that. I might have to see if I can change that because that's a little annoying. What's the next? Intelligence. I really hate that it does that. Why won't it just put me out here? Intelligence. What's the next? Judgment. Is it? Willpower? I think it's willpower. Yeah, see, it's doing it there too. I have a second page pulled up on my other monitor. I can just check it there. Talent, intelligence, willpower, judgment. Yep. And then we've got zeal. Yeah, no, I was doing that right. Appearance. Charisma. Oh, why did it... Seems to work fine in that one. I don't know why it didn't stay inside like it has been. And then social class. Okay, so let's see if this has changed. Oh, and you know what? It would maybe do me good to put a line break in between, just like I'm doing with all this stuff. That way it's easier to read. Okay, cool. And let's add a function that adds them all together and then prints it. And you can do that straight in the print line here, or I could assign a new value for it or something. Like if I came back up here and I could say total, no, int total. Also, int stands for integer. There's a couple different ways to do numbers. Integer is easy because it's single digits, or not single digits. It's just whole numbers. It's relatively simple. If you wanted to get more advanced, there's double, which you can have decimals in. So double, I guess, is more advanced, but not necessarily just the thing you have to use all the time. In fact, integer is what I use a lot. But integer total value, just assign that to 0 so that, you know, if nothing gets put inside of that integer, we know that nothing is getting put inside of it. Why? A little weird that it's not. Oh. Perhaps because of that. Yep. So what I can do is I can say total value is equal to new character. Actually, there's an easy way to do this. I'll have it call a new method. I'm gonna say dot total value. And what this is doing is absolutely nothing right now because I've not written it here yet. But I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom here. Give myself some space so it's easier to read. And then method to add all attributes for the total value. Public int get total value, and again, don't need to pass it any kind of number, but all we gotta say is return constitution plus. Did I misspell that? No, it's because I don't have a line break on it yet. Constitution plus strength plus dexterity plus agility plus talent plus another thing, I believe you don't need to put a space for the addition. I just like to because it makes it easier to read. Talent plus intelligence plus willpower plus judgment plus zeal plus appearance plus charisma plus social. And then I put a line break at the end there. Everything pops in. You can tell it's all right because it's got that light, not the light blue highlight, but the light colored. Oh, interesting. The light blue highlight, I guess it's saying that this value is in regard to that. But the light blue highlight, not the light blue highlight, the light blue coloring of the words means that it found them all to be a value, a variable. And now if I come back here, this now shows up as a thing, and I can print that by just running it. 160. So that is in fact going over the max amount. I wonder if there's a way to adjust that so that there's a pretty simple, what is 144 divided by 3? That is not what I meant to type. 48. So I suppose I could set a max value of 48 in each category. But potentially you could have a 36, a 36, and then a like 60? Is that 36 plus 24? Yeah. You could potentially have a 60 in one category the way we do it, and then a 36 and a 36. I will probably, this is a really chimp brain way to do it, and definitely not the way I should do it, but I could say, I could take all of this, all of it, tab it over, and say do, and give it a bracket here, do while total. I wonder if I can call it. I think I can call it from just right here. Can't I? No, maybe not. Is it stats dot total value? No. Or is that just because I'm a dumb idiot and broke something else? Nope. Nope. Yeah, it's because of this. I don't think this is 54 lines skipped. Yes, because there's no while statement. Do while. I guess I'll just type it out here to be, since it's such a dumb chimp-brained result anyway, or fix. But do while constitution plus strength plus, I already typed it out here. I don't have to type this again. But I can literally just tell it to run it until it adds up and does not exceed 144. Which, again, real chimp-brained way to do it. It's not the smartest solution. It's not even close to, like, the correct solution. Is less than or equal to 144. And I'll just call this max value. The reason I do the capitals and wait, Oh, I'm over so far. The reason I do the capitals like this is because that is how you should do constants, but for some reason it won't let me put the const modifier. I just have not figured that out yet because I didn't feel like figuring it out. I felt like getting some coding done. So instead, I capitalize it like you should be doing. It's probably because I'm trying to declare it up here. Think realistically, I would declare it without a value and then put the value down here, but I'm not totally confident on my memory for that. I'll just look it up later and figure it out. Just like how I'll probably find a much, much better way to do this later. But essentially, it's just saying, run this. If it exceeds 144, run it again. And it'll do that until it comes under 144, which is a really, really dumb way to do it. And it is essentially just a brute force. And it did not fix it. Interesting. Did I do the comparison wrong? That's right, max value. Alright, well, what I will do is I will have a fun little thing where it creates, similar to a for loop, it creates a new variable each time it runs. So it'll say a new int called total value. And at first, this guy is set to what? Over 144 is what would, whoops, 145 is what would do it. It would help if maybe I put that there. But so basically it's saying total value is 144, and we're essentially rigging it so that instead of this huge line of code, it says while total value is less than or equal to max value, it will run. That's why I did it. It'll run until it goes over max value. I need it to stop unless... No, I need to rerun if it is over max value. So if it is greater than max value, rerun. Okay. It doesn't like that total value. Well, I mean, now that I've figured it out, maybe I will just try this again. Remove this guy. So we want this to be just greater than max value. If it is greater than max value, run it again. I have never said I'm the best at math. Yep, 136, 122, 136, 144. Oh, wow, it hit right up. Nice. 141. 140. And granted, I mean, this is just the random generation. This is probably not how a lot of people will be doing their characters, since most of us are fairly experienced and have a general idea of how we want to build them and like where we want to assign points. So we will go ahead and assign points. Basically, the thing that I have this set up for is just purely to like if we have like a new player or something, or we just need to draft up like an NPC character or something, you know, just need basic stats, you run this function, it'll just pop you up stats, basically. So not necessarily the way it will end up being done. Just a way for it to be done. And again, like the loop until it's under max value is just kind of a dirty way to do it. But now that that is done, I think it's time I get on to the overloaded constructor. And so what I'll do is take this line of code and I'll just comment it out. Like that. Basically all this is now just like a block of commented code, so it doesn't run any of this. Typically you would use it to write like comments, but I'm using it to like these are single line comment blocks. You do the // it'll // it'll block it out. But just the one line. This is a block, so it goes until it hits the end here. I use these for big sections, or if I have a line that I need to eliminate to test or troubleshoot, just I'll / cut it out. I didn't really see a huge point in doing like it's just a small section here. This is much bigger, so I used the other type. But also, I think it's just that. I think actually up here is where I should have the Java doc, the documentation, which is in fact ****. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed I started doing the stream so late. If I had thought earlier, I could have had more time to do this, except I didn't really think about how much time I had left until I'd head to work. So I'll probably go ahead and cut it here. And I might stream again tomorrow. It really depends on what I end up doing this weekend. But for anybody who may see this, thank you for watching, and yeah, that's about it.